October 26th, 2017. I hate Halloween. Hate it with a searing passion. Just the sight of a grinning pumpkin is enough to put me in a foul mood. And this isn't a recent thing either. I've harbored this fiery loathing for almost 2 decades now. Over the years, I've raged at the countless kids who've come to my doorstep wearing silly costumes drenched in fake blood to beg for candy. My sour mood on this blasted day can easily give old Ebenezer Scrooge a run for his money. Lily, my little girl, doesn't really understand why I'm like this. Why exactly does her doting father turn into a famed Grinch every 31st of October? I can't tell her, it's too dangerous. Just speaking about the horrors that I've seen all those years ago can invite them back into my life, like getting re-injured by scratching the scab off a recent wound. I've worked so hard to bury all that stuff deep in the garbage dump of my mind. I cannot allow anything to help dig those memories free. Not like they need much help either. Every year as Halloween approaches, I can feel them scratching at the back of my mind, trying to claw their way out to the back of my eyelids each time that I squeeze my eyes shut. Everything that had happened starts to play out like an old grainy film, leaving me a sweaty, breathless mess. Not even my wife knows what had happened to me 18 years ago, what I had seen that night. But tonight I feel compelled to write the events of that night down. I feel like it's the right time to do it, just before I go and finally bring this nightmare to an end. It was the turn of the millennium, fall in the year of 1999. I was a scrawny 11-year-old white kid living in a small town in America. Having been born in a well-off family, I hadn't experienced danger or fear in a meaningful enough way to sharpen my survival instinct. Maybe if I had, I wouldn't have gotten up to the kind of stupid shit that made me stumble into the worst mistake of my life. And we lived in a close-knit community, so I had plenty of friends growing up, mostly from backgrounds similar to mine. By far, my closest friends were Jonah, the pimply Jewish kid with the buzz cut, red-headed Ed with a plump face pockmarked with freckles, gangly Michael, the lone black friend of our group and our grade as well. And finally, there was a tough guy, Adam, who wasn't just fat like Ed, but he had thick arms that were beginning to swell with muscles. A sausage fest, I know. No, it's not that we hated girls, we just lacked the social skills required to interact with them beyond stammering out the awkward hi in the hallway. And most of those went unheard as well. The 5 of us were as tight as a fist. Others would flit in and out of the group, but the core made up of us 5 stayed intact all throughout our childhood. At least it did until we decided to summon the devil on Halloween 1999. Small towns like ours always have folk tales and legends that give them more characters than they truly deserve. Sometimes it's a haunted house, sometimes a hairy monster out in the woods, and sometimes an insane ice cream truck driver that murders little children. Ours had a ritual, one that can help you summon the devil on Halloween and make him do your bidding. The story goes that for some reason that changes depending on who you're talking to. Satan had once been made to bleed on our soil, causing our town to acquire a special significance for the Lord of the Fallen. You see, because at one point he found himself wounded on this land, he's forever cursed to be in a weakened state here. Much more so on the night the veil separating the living from the dead turns translucent, allowing us the opportunity and the capability to summon him, bind him, and command him. Sounds nonsensical, right? Well, we thought so too, right up until the moment he appeared in Michael's attic. It was my idea, of course. Who else but the troublemaker of the group would suggest something like this? My plan was to use the ritual to scare the shit out of Jonah and Ed. Do the old hocus pocus and then either act like I had been possessed by a demon, or get Adam to pretend to be the devil himself. The guy had a real gruff voice. Puberty had hit his throat harder than a truck full of cigarettes. Now that voice in a dark and cramped attic. Shit, but it could make even old Lucifer yellow as briefs. Don't get me wrong, I really wasn't trying to hurt my friends or leave them with permanent emotional scars. It was all supposed to be in good fun, just a harmless prank. Who would have thought that shit would go off the deep end the way that it did? Certainly not me. The night was still young and bustling with costume-clad trick-or-treaters and buzzed college students when it found me on Michael's porch. His double-story house was built in the colonial style with thick slate walls and a small round window in the attic that glared down the entire length of the cul-de-sac. I whistled as I hopped up the creaky steps and knuckled the doorbell, muscle memory guiding my action more than conscious decision. The door clicked open almost immediately and Adam's grinning face popped out. "Damn, dude, you're already here," I said. "Why the hell wouldn't I be?" he asked, still smiling. "Not like I have any place better to be. Quick, get in, Jonah and Ed aren't here yet." He held the door open for me. I ducked under his arm and sauntered into the living room where Michael was sitting on the couch poring over a ragged, piss-colored piece of paper. "Yo," I greeted him, "what you doing?" He looked up. "Hey, I'm just reading up on this ritual thing is all about." "Oh, come on, bro," Adam groaned, closing the door shut behind him. "You've read that thing a million times already. What are you trying to write an essay on it or something?" He raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Hey, I'm just being careful. Which you'd be too, might I add, if it was your house that we're trying to summon Satan in." "Yeah, well, the thing is, Michael," I said as I plopped myself down on the couch next to him, "Satan isn't real. It's just stuff they made up to stop you from making the bald cry." He raised an eyebrow. "Making the bald man cry?" "Yep." I nodded and wiggled my finger in the air. "They really don't want you scratching Yoda behind the ears." "Absolutely," Adam said solemnly as he sat on the chair in front of us. "They hate if you beat the bishop, and don't even think about flogging the one-eyed snake." Michael's face looked like he had bitten a chunk out of rotten cheese. "God, you guys are gross." Adam and I giggled and gave each other a high five. "So," Michael said, trying to cut our laughter short, "are we really doing this?" "Course we are," I said. "Don't tell me you're thinking about chickening out." "Yeah, don't do that, Michael," Adam added. "That's not very nice." "I'm not chickening out, okay," he said. "I don't have any problems with scaring the crap out of Jonah and Ed. I'm just saying that we really don't have to do the ritual exactly like the legend says." I shook my head. "No, we absolutely have to do it the right way. We need to keep it real or the reveal won't have quite the impact." "Yeah, I don't know." "Come on, man, I promise you the devil isn't going to pop up in your attic." "Yeah, Michael, don't be a baby," Adam said. "Screw you," he fired back. "And I'm not a baby." You kind of are," I said softly. He glared at the both of us. Christ. Less than 5 minutes later, we climbed the creaky stairs to Michael's attic and pushed the door open. I smiled as my eyes drank the scene in. It was cramped and dingy. The smell of mold and damp wood hung thick in the air. The corners were piled with broken furniture covered in tattered rags. Discarded toys and other knickknacks littered the wooden floor. Dust motes shivered in the weak moonlight that struggled its way through the round dirt-speckled window. Next to the window was a white cabinet with paint peeling off its panels. It was just large enough to allow one of us to squeeze into it. Perfect. "Where's the damn light switch?" Adam asked. Michael didn't bother to reply and slipped off to our left. Seconds later, we heard a click as a golden light flooded the attic, revealing the grime that caked the floor. "Crap, dude, you really need to get some cleaning done up here," Adam said. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Adam. Next time I decide to summon Lucifer to this place, I'll make sure to grab a broom and sweep the floor first." "You really should. I'm sure that he'll appreciate the cleanliness." I chuckled. "What, you think the devil is some kind of neat freak?" "Huh?" "It would be kind of funny if he was," I muttered and then raised my voice as he walked towards the cabinet. "Open it up. Let's see if we can fit you in there." The rotted wooden door let out a thin squeal as Adam forced it open and squatted down in front of it before crawling into the blasted thing, and then turning and facing us. From within the shadows that writhed in the cabinet, he flashed us a satisfied grin. "He looks like a frog, doesn't he?" Michael asked. "Ribbit, ribbit," Adam said. I laughed. "Just you wait there, little froggy. We'll get you some flies and shit to gobble up." "Yummy." Michael checked his watch. "Those two should be here soon. We want to go downstairs and make sure that everything is ready for the ritual." I nodded as Adam climbed out of the cabinet. "You're gonna be okay up here all alone." Sure, I'm just gonna take the time to practice my demon voice. Awesome, Michael laughed. All right, let's go then. I followed him out of the attic. A smile crossed my mouth as I heard Adam begin to growl behind me. Are you sure your parents will stay gone? I asked Michael as we descended the attic stairs. I don't want them popping up in the middle of the night and finding us pulling some satanic shit in the attic. He waved his hand dismissively. Don't worry about it. There's no way Dad's boss lets them get off early tonight. A mandatory party, I mused. On Halloween, Christ, what an asshole. No kids allowed either, he quipped. So yeah, we'll have more than enough time to have a little chat with the devil. Can't wait. At the bottom of the stairs, Michael turned right and headed off towards the kitchen. I took a second to peek out the living room window to see whether Jonah and Ed had arrived yet before following in his footsteps. In the kitchen, I found him carefully placing 3 wax candles inside a grinning pumpkin. I watched as he retrieved a box of matches from his shelf and then nodded at me. Alright, we're all set now. Just have to wait for our 2 little lambs and lead them off to their slaughter. A chill of malicious excitement rippled through me. God, this is gonna be good. We spent a couple of minutes going over each step of the ritual before the bell rang. It was loud and hollow like something that you would hear in an old church. A message from God. Go and scare the shit out of your friends, my child. I flashed Michael a grin and made my way over to the front door. As I swung it open, I found myself staring at Fat Batman and Anemic Robin. I'm sorry, kids, I don't have any more candy left to give. Oh, screw you, Johnny, Ed said as he pushed his way past me and waddled into the house. Hey, Johnny, Jonah said as he followed, his Robin costume hanging loosely on his thin frame. They traded greetings with Michael and proceeded to make themselves comfortable on the living room couch before showing us their haul of sweets. So is Adam really not coming? Ed asked as he munched on a bar of chocolate that he had gotten from Mrs. Abernathy. Nah, he's gone to his grandma's place, I said, quickly shooting a glance at Michael. It sucks because I think he would have really loved to be a part of the ritual. Yeah, about that, Jonah said. Are we really doing that? Of course we are. We talked about this repeatedly, remember? I don't know, man. It just seems stupid, Jonah said, gently shrugging his shoulders. Stupid? Wait a minute. Are you scared, Jonah? I asked, injecting mockery into my voice. He shook his head defensively. I'm not scared, okay? It's just, I don't know. You don't know what? I asked. I don't know. It's just stupid. Wow, what a compelling argument. You've certainly convinced me that you're not scared shitless right now. Michael rolled his eyes and Ed snickered. I'm not scared, I just think that we shouldn't be messing around with this stuff. Like, what if we accidentally start a fire or something? Start a fire? Because of 3 candles and a pumpkin. He bit his lip as his eyes darted around. Scaredy cat, I said. He frowned. I'm not a scaredy cat. You kinda are. Oh, screw it then, Jonah said indignantly. Let's do it. I'll show just how scared I am. You tell him, Jonah, Ed said. Okay then, let's do it, I said. What? Right away? Jonah asked. Well, yeah, right away. Oh, alright then, Jonah said meekly before squealing in fright as Michael thrust the carved pumpkin into his face. Oh, quit it, Mikey, Ed chortled. Save some for the devil. Adam was nowhere to be seen when we entered the attic. I had made sure to make as much noise as possible when we climbed up the stairs so that he had more than enough time to pack himself into the little cabinet. Consciously trying not to look at his hiding place, Michael and I made the others sit down in a circle near the window, such that Jonah and Ed's backs were facing the cabinet. The light hadn't been turned on, and so the murky moonlight was the only source of illumination up there. The shadows added a dash of tension to the atmosphere. It took a Herculean amount of effort to keep a smile from crossing my face and giving the game away. The thought of Adam's gravelly voice seeping out of the closet, his thick hands slamming onto the back of their necks, was threatening to send me into a fit of giggles. I pursed my lips as Michael scooted forward and placed the pumpkin at the center of our circle. Alright, so you guys know what to do, right? Michael asked. Yes, Ed answered, and it was soon echoed by Jonah. Okay, good. I'm gonna go over it all once again anyway. Michael said and handed out thumb-sized pieces of crisp white paper. Write your names on these, and then when your turn comes, toss your paper into the fire and state 2 things: your greatest desire and your greatest secret. As simple as that, I muttered as I took one and hastily scrawled my name on it. The sound of pen scratching paper and weight shifting on wood filled the attic. As these sounds retreated, a thick and heavy silence swept into the room. "Okay," Michael said softly. It was almost a whisper. "Here we go." The sound of a match flaring to life issued, and a small bright flame floated above Michael's thumb. He used the match to light the candles placed inside the pumpkin, whose smile turned sinister with the golden glow. "So, who wants to go first?" Michael asked. "Johnny?" "Sure," I said, and then took a deep breath before tossing my paper into the jack-o'-lantern. "What I want more than anything is to be a wrestler, the best in the world, better than Bret Hart." I glared at the others, daring them to laugh at me, and none of them did. I gritted my teeth. "My biggest secret is that I steal money from my dad's wallet to buy cigarettes." It wasn't even close to being my biggest secret, but no way that I was revealing that for a prank. No, this would have to suffice. Michael nodded. "I guess I'll go next." His hand shook a little as he tossed his paper in. "What I want more than anything is to be an F1 driver." He looked at each of us in turn. "There's something about the thought of being on that racetrack, going as fast as I possibly can, and that just gets me going, man. Now, I'm not saying that I want to be Schumacher, but I would love to race him, you know what I mean?" I bobbed my head knowingly. He scratched his jaw. "My biggest secret is that I'm absolutely terrified of spiders." Ed snorted. "Oh, come on, dude, that's your biggest secret." "Hey, don't judge me. I don't have any other deep secrets, okay? I'm an open book." He seemed too jittery to be telling the truth, but I didn't call him out on it. Next was Jonah. As he tossed his paper into the fire, thunder rumbled in the distance outside. Funny, I thought. I hadn't seen a single cloud in the sky that day. "What I want more than anything is to be a surgeon like my grandfather," he said. "Saving people's lives and all that. I know it sounds a little corny, but I really want to be like him." "Grandpa's boy through and through, huh?" I said. "I dig it." He bit his lip and he let his eyes sweep over the rest of us. "My biggest secret is that I hate my parents. My mom beats me and my dad is a workaholic who doesn't have any time for me. This man told me he wishes that I had never been born. My grandpa was the only family I loved and now he's even gone." "Jesus Christ, dude." Michael swore and Ed clapped his hand on his mouth. "Wow, you really laid it all out there," I said, my eyes wide with surprise. I felt a twinge of guilt in my chest. I only wanted to scare him, not this. "It's supposed to be our biggest secret, isn't it?" Jonah asked. "The only way we would stay safe in this ritual is if we're completely honest, isn't that right?" The twinge of guilt turned into a throbbing ache. God, he was taking this shit way too seriously. I couldn't see the look on his face. Had it somehow gotten darker in here? I turned my neck to gaze out the window when my attention was drawn to Ed's voice. "All right, I'm next," he said, pulling himself closer to the pumpkin, his fat belly jiggling with the movement. He crushed the paper in his hand and hurled it into the jack-o'-lantern. "What I want more than anything is to lose some freaking weight." That wasn't a surprise to anybody. And my biggest secret is that I believe my mom enjoys seeing me be this fat. She loves the fact that she's not the only pig in the family. I'll never get thin as long as I'm living with her. She'll keep pouring all the grease in the world on my throat. And my dad's too much of a coward to stop her. He steadily grew angrier with each word, turning red as a tomato by the end of his rant. His eyes, pricked with tears, retreated into his skull as his face scrunched up into an expression of deep loathing. An uncomfortable silence choked the attic. The only thing punctuating it was Ed's heavy breathing. Jonah patted his back but didn't say anything. Adam hadn't popped out of his hiding place, fortunately for all of us. The only thing that could make it all worse was admitting to Jonah and Ed that we had made them say all that stuff for a dumb prank. I glanced at the cabinet to give him a signal to not continue with what we had planned in case he hadn't yet been dissuaded by what we had all just heard. A frown creased my brow. I couldn't see the cabinet. When the hell did it get this dark? And why was it so quiet? We should have at least heard the sounds of cars and revelers on the streets outside. "Oh, don't cry, Ed, buddy," Michael said. "I mean, no matter what happens, you've got us, right?" "Yes, you do," Jonah added. My ears were strained for any noise from the streets outside. My heart pounded in my chest when I didn't hear anything. Right, Johnny." I jumped and looked at Michael. "Huh?" "I was telling Ed that we would always be there for him, isn't that right?" I nodded absentmindedly. "Yeah, for sure, we'll always have your back." "Hey, do any of you guys hear?" I was cut off by a noise. Heavy boots, thudding on the attic stairs. Holy shit. What is that? You don't think that's actually... Michael, you said your parents weren't going to be home. Michael's stunned expression made me feel like somebody had dumped a bucket of ice down the back of my shirt. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and more purposeful. It sounded like a hammer on wood. "What the hell? Quick, hide the pumpkin." "Guys, that's it, I'm coming out." "Why? What good will that do?" Someone screamed. "Is that Adam?" I didn't pay any attention to Adam's attempts to crawl out of his hiding spot or to see the others' reactions at him having been this close all along. My eyes were nailed to the attic. Thoughts churned inside my head. Who was going to come in? I was desperately pulling my mind away from the obvious answer. It was too irrational, too terrifying. The door was flung open with a loud bang. A tall figure stood at the threshold, silhouetted by the yellow light fixed on the landing below. He was dressed in a black suit and wore a black top hat. I squinted, but I couldn't see his face. He walked in. As his boots clicked on the wooden floor, we rushed away from him and tried to hug the walls with our backs. He made his way over to where we had been sitting and came to a halt at the exact same spot where we had placed the pumpkin. A loud thud followed. "Guys, what's happening outside?" Another thud. "Why is this locked? Why can't I get it open?" The stranger cocked his head and looked at the cabinet. Another thud. "Hell, I'm gonna break this thing down." He waved his hand in an offhand manner. The cabinet fell silent. It was bizarre. The thing was still rattling and we could see, and we could feel Adam thrashing around inside, but no sound issued from the cabinet. My head swam at what I was seeing. The intruder, no. The devil finally tore our attention away from the cabinet. He walked towards the pile of discarded furniture, pulled out an old rag-covered chair with creaky legs and sat himself down on it. "All right, boys," he said, his voice harsh like sandpaper. "Let's get on with it, shall we?" None of us replied to him. We didn't so much as move. "Chop chop, I don't have all night." I balled up my clammy hands into fists but didn't say anything. "Speak," he said loudly. It made me flinch. "You obviously had something in mind when you decided to summon me, now didn't you? So talk." To my left, Michael muttered something. "Loudly, son, let us all hear what you have to say." An audible gulp followed. We didn't think you would come, Mr. Lucifer." The devil's chest shook with a silent chuckle. "I'm not Lucifer, kiddo. You really think you would waste his time on stupid shit like this? Nah, grunts like me are enough for this." Further to Michael's left, somebody was sobbing. Jonah or Ed, I couldn't tell. What are you?" Michael asked, his voice cracking. "Is that really the most important question for you right now?" No. "Then what is it you should be asking?" I spoke up before Michael could. "Will you let us go?" I noticed a flash of white teeth in the shadows as he grinned. "No, not if I can help it." A shudder ran through me. My knees right about gave out. "Please," Michael said, "let us go." "Nah, don't think so." "But we performed the ritual," he sobbed. "You have to." You failed at performing the ritual, you mean? You can't really expect to contain a demon with phony shit into weak resolve, kids. You really can't. Sir, is there any way that we can leave? I asked. And now you finally asked the right question. Yes, Johnny, my boy, there is a way for the four of you to leave. Dear God, he knew my name. Well, what is it? Michael asked. Simple. One of you needs to give me his soul. What? I asked aghast. One soul, that's all I ask. Surely you guys can bring yourself to sacrifice one of your own. How about Adam? He can't listen to what's happening here right now, so he won't ever get to know what condemned him. How does that sound? Good? Yeah. Give me your buddy's soul and I'll let you all walk out of here alive. Don't, and I'll kill you for bothering me on this fine evening and go along on my merry way. Not a bad deal, right? I would take it if I were you. His offer shocked us all into silence. Finally, after a couple of agonizingly long moments, I opened my mouth, not quite believing what I was about to say. We would need some time to. Jonah cut me off. No, we can't. We can't kill him and condemn him to an eternity of torture. We can't. So do you want to take his place then? Michael asked, his voice somehow thick with sarcasm even in a situation as terrifying as this. No, Jonah replied, his voice wavering. But we can't do this to him. It's not right. Why not, Jonah? One of us has to die, so why not him? Or are you telling me that you have some other way of getting us out of here? I was practically screaming. And don't forget, Adam bullied the shit out of you. I mean, he was planning to scare the crap out of you, and now you want to be a martyr for him. What? So are you, Johnny, you piece of shit. How about we all kill you instead? Jonah shot back. Don't be stupid, Jonah, I said, trying not to let the dread that I was feeling creep into my voice. He's my friend, I don't want him to die. But if it's between me and him, I'm choosing myself. I agree, Michael whispered and then raised his voice. It's not right, but it's the only way out. In this situation, his is the only name that we all can agree on. It's the only way. Ed squeaked his agreement. Looks like you've been outvoted, Jonah, I said, feeling slightly relieved. It's not a democracy, Jonah protested. We can't leave Adam's fate up to a vote. You stupid suicidal idiot, I cursed. What is wrong with you? The demon clapped his hands, shutting us all up in an instant. As interesting as this conversation has been, and as much as I would like to watch this little ethical dilemma play out, I have better things to do tonight. So let me sweeten the deal a little bit. He paused for effect. 18 years, and let me feed on Adam's soul for 18 years and then I'll let you try and free him. Sounds fair. But I'm warning you, if you try to perform the ritual before those years are up, the demon who will be answering won't be nearly as nice as I have been. Remember, 18 years. I gave Jonah a quizzical look. He turned his head away in disgust. We have a deal, I said quickly before one of them could change their minds. He grinned, his teeth bared, reminding me of a shark. Finally. He clicked his fingers. The gap between the panels and the frame of the cabinet lit up with a blindingly bright orange glow. Smoke billowed out and sound came rushing back. Adam screamed and slammed into the door of the cabinet. My heart shriveled up as I heard and felt the agony in his voice. Sweat beaded on my forehead as tears gushed out of my eyes. I was listening to my friend's death throes. The screaming continued for what felt like hours, sawing themselves into our memory. We didn't try to help him, we couldn't. Our bodies wouldn't move. It felt like our nerves had been flooded with ice. We stood rooted to our spots like mannequins even as the smell of burning flesh swamped our nostrils. Adam's death left an utterly terrifying silence in its wake. I couldn't see the other three, but I knew that the same thought filled all our heads. What had we just done? Now run, you little shits. Run before I change my mind and decide to kill you all anyway. We didn't wait for him to say anything else and scrambled for the attic stairs, staying as far away from him as humanly possible. It was a stampede of rats that poured down the stairs, pulling and shoving, clawing and scratching to be the first one out. We damn near tore the front door right off its hinges as we ran out of the house, not even sparing a single glance towards the attic. We never spoke about that night again, not for another 18 years. They never found out what happened to Adam. He was reported missing, of course, but nobody ever found his body. A statewide search was called, but the rest of us kept our mouths tightly sealed. His disappearance broke his family. His dad drowned himself in liquor and his mother took her own life shortly after, but we still didn't say anything. Michael was the first to move out of town, for better educational prospects, he said, but we all knew better. I met him at the arcade one last time before he left. No mention was made of what had happened on that Halloween, but I could see its effects on his tired and hollowed face. Jonah, Ed, and I quickly followed, hoping to put the nightmare behind us in that shit stain of a town. But that night never left us. Its shadow stretched over our lives all 18 years, tormenting us day in and day out, until we had no other choice left but to return to our hometown and confront our demons. November 1st, 2018, 4:37 a.m. It's been 18 years since that night. Feels like an eternity to me. I've counted the days, the minutes, even the seconds down to this monumental milestone. I mean, how could I not? Everything that has happened to me, all the shit that I've been through in these agonizingly long years can all be traced back to what we all did in Michael's attic that Halloween. It's not like I wanted to spend all these years dwelling on the events of October 31st, 1999. Trust me, I wanted to forget all about it the second that I stumbled out of that cursed home, my dead best friend notwithstanding. I made a promise to that monster that I would return to free Adam's soul, but as much as it pains me to admit this, I was lying. Forget returning to that house. I wasn't even going to talk about it or what we did there ever again. But unfortunately for me, the demon knew that I was lying to him. He knew that none of us, barring Jonah, were ever truly planning on going back there again. And so he made sure that we were all compelled to do so. You know what I regret the most? It's not that we sacrificed Adam to save ourselves. That I could justify to my consciousness by telling it that we had no other choice but to do what we did. Now the one thing that truly makes me want to slam my head into a spiked fence is what I had said during the ritual. I had wisely kept my deepest secrets close to me, but I had been foolish enough to blabber about my most heartfelt desire, because the demon made it come true. I became the world's greatest professional wrestler. It's just that no one knows about me. I'm the guy whose clips you see on YouTube while you're 11 recommendations deep in your lazy surfing. The guy with the most insane spots in an independent show in front of about 30 people. The most fanatic of wrestling fanatics will name me as one of the most technically gifted performers of all time. But that's the extent of it. My face isn't plastered over television screens. I have no action figures made in my image. I don't have millions of kids queuing up to buy my t-shirts every year. Hell, I barely make enough money to put food on the table. Better than Bret Hart, my ass. I tried quitting. Night after night, I put my neck on the line in life-threatening spots and decided that this is it. I'm done, I'm out. I'm gonna go out and find an actual job that pays well and doesn't come with such dangerous risks. But every time I do, I'm taken with a strange fever. My skin turns red hot. My breath seizes in my chest. Sweat starts gushing out of every pore in my body and I start grunting and tossing and turning in bed until I finally change my mind and decide to stick to wrestling. Sometimes I'll convince myself that my condition is physical and not supernatural, and try to tell the next wrestling promoter that I'm working for that I'm done and I'm out. But then the sickness returns with an enraged vengeance. God, why didn't I just say that I wanted to be a librarian or something? Michael, Ed, and Jonah had the same experience as me. I mean, I always suspected that they did. Didn't know for sure because I didn't speak to them until just a few hours ago. 18 minutes before it became 18 years since we performed the ritual, I found myself in front of what used to be Michael's house. I was shocked to see that not much had changed. The well-paved road of the cul-de-sac, rows of nearly identical houses, neatly trimmed hedges bordering well-maintained lawns, almost exactly as we had left it, right down to the Halloween decorations. I guess the cars were newer and some of the houses had been torn down and rebuilt. Minor changes, imperceptible scars on the face of an old friend. Michael's place was one of the many that hadn't seen any changes at all. From the cobblestone pathway leading up to the 3 wooden steps of the porch to the painted gray doors of the garage and even the twisting branches of the old oak, it was all the same. I could almost see a younger me hopping up the porch, knuckling the doorbell and waiting for his friend to let him in for some mischief. My grip tightened on the steering wheel of my battered truck as my heart thudded in my chest. The happy memories of my childhood were starting to be infected with the horrors of the attic. The screams, the smell of burning flesh, the smoke. I sucked in a deep breath, shook my head and climbed out of the truck, slamming the door shut behind me. My boots clicked awkwardly on the asphalt as I made my way towards the house. My knees still remembered the tombstone pile driver that I had given to my last opponent on a concrete floor. Didn't think you were gonna come. I jumped at the voice that boomed from somewhere behind me. I turned and saw a tall black man in his 30s walking toward me. Michael? He gave me a toothy grin. The very same. Jesus, I said as my eyes drifted over him. You look old. He did too. He was balding and graying, had deep circles under his tired eyes. Yeah, well, that's usually what 18 years do to people, Johnny. I smiled as I shook his hand. True. So, how have you been, man? Really? You have to ask. You know I wouldn't be here if I was doing okay. I nodded awkwardly. I've seen some of your matches on YouTube, by the way. I had to spend hours looking them up, of course. Boy, you're as good as you said you wanted to be, and then some. He gave a tired smirk. That guy got you just as good as he got me, didn't he? Yeah, it seems like he did. What did he do to you? Well, I asked to be an F1 driver, didn't I? Well, he got half of that right. You're looking at the city's fastest Uber driver, brother. One with a back so messed up from staying in a seated position in a confined space. It's the most painful thing imaginable for the poor guy, leaving him with no choice but to rack up speeding tickets. Christ, just hoping to end it all tonight, man. Yeah. I didn't tell him that I didn't think we could actually end it. So where are the others? You think they're all just as messed up as us then? He shrugged. They've gotta be. I mean, you can bet your ass that our dear demon is not gonna half-ass any. He was cut off by a pair of bright yellow lights that splashed on him, temporarily blinding him. I squinted as I craned my neck and looked at the source of the sudden illumination. Headlights. A black SUV had just been parked on the street. Its doors opened and 2 figures climbed out. I recognized one of them, Jonah. I could recognize that face anywhere. He was taller than last I had seen him, but not by much. He had filled out his frame nicely enough though, must have been working out. He was wearing an expensive-looking suit too. Why the hell does he look healthy and rich? I heard Michael ask. I didn't answer, for my attention was drawn towards the other man. He was the thinnest person that I had ever seen in my life. Nothing but pale and spotted skin stretched over frail bones. I would never in my wildest dreams have guessed who it was if he hadn't been accompanying Jonah. Holy shit, I whispered. Well, he wanted to lose some weight, didn't he? Michael said sardonically. I sincerely doubt he wanted to lose all of it. Jonah waved his hand as he got close to us. Hey Johnny, Michael, I'm glad to see you've decided to come. That's good. We'll have a much better shot at getting it done if we're all here. Ed sidled up to him and gave us an unsure wave. Hey. Man, you look like you had a good life, Jonah, I said. How the hell is that possible? Jonah's mouth dropped open. Are you kidding me? No, I haven't had a good life, Johnny. Thank you very much. It's been hell these past 18 years. I still have nightmares about that night. The guilt, it eats me up. I can't have a normal relationship to save my life. I've spent a fortune on therapy and it didn't do anything. Why do you have a fortune to spend? I asked and then turned to look at Michael. Why does he have a fortune to spend? What, you didn't know? Michael replies bitterly. Our dear Jonah is a hotshot doctor, one of the fastest rising stars in his hospital. It's because I buried myself in my work, Michael. I had to keep my sanity. Oh, cry me a river, I spat. Yeah, screw you too then, Johnny, he fired back. You know what, now that I look at you, maybe I am a little better off, but maybe, just maybe, it's your fault for being a piece of shit and getting Adam killed. Oh, I got Adam killed. No, don't you dare put that shit on me. You were more than happy to go along with it. I was not, and you know it. Just like you know it's your fault that he's dead. Performing the ritual to prank us, knowingly messing it up and letting the demon get stronger, and then when shit goes wrong, immediately throwing your best friend under the bus to save your own butt. It's all you, Johnny, all you. Spit was practically flying from his mouth. I gritted my teeth and balled up my fists. Okay, blame me all you like, it doesn't change the fact that your hands are just as bloody as mine. Guys, stop. You know what your problem is? You're a coward, Jonah, you always were. Stop. I flinched until he had just screamed and I had forgotten that Ed was even here. Stop, okay, he said, shivering. You're both right and you're both wrong. Johnny, you can't judge Jonah. You don't know what he's been through. He's had to deal with his own shit, so you don't have to pile your own on top of it. Also, even if he is as well off as you say he is, he still came back now, didn't he? He didn't have to, but he did. Doesn't that prove that he still cares about us? About Adam? I looked away sharply. And Jonah, he continued, it's shitty to blame Johnny for what happened. He didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, who would have thought an actual demon was going to pop up? We were all just kids doing stupid kid stuff, so don't hold that against him. And it's not just his fault that Adam's dead. We're all to blame for it, all of us, you got that? Yeah, he whispered. So now can we please do what we came here to do and end this nightmare once and for all? Amen, Michael muttered. Less than a minute later, we were standing on the doorstep of what used to be Michael's house with all the necessary ingredients for the ritual in our hands. So, how do we do this? Do we ring the doorbell and ask the homeowners to let us in to summon a demon in their attic? Well, what else do you suggest? Michael asked. We break in or something? Move, Jonah said as he pushed his way past us and slid a key into the door lock. Why do you have that? Michael asked. Because he bought the house, Ed said as he shot me a sharp look. Jonah nudged the door open and we stepped in. The place looked like it hadn't seen any occupants in years. No furniture in sight, damaged wooden floor caked in layers of grime, torn wallpaper, exposed wiring, dirt-speckled glass windows. If it hadn't been dark, we wouldn't have missed the signs of decay from the outside. It looks a lot different from how I remember it, Michael mused. God, so many memories here. And nightmares too, I added. Let's get a move on, Jonah said. The less time we spend here, the better. Place makes my skin crawl. Yet you bought it, I thought, but I bit back the words before they could spill out of my mouth. The climb to the attic was silent and tense. The vein in my forehead pulsed in rhythm with our footsteps, which sounded like marching drums at a funeral. My hands were shaking and my face was coated in sweat. I felt my heart skip a beat as I heard the door creak open. We shuffled into the attic, which was much darker and gloomier than the last time we had seen it. The circular window had been boarded up such that not even a sliver of moonlight seeped in, forcing us to use our phones' flashlights to guide our way. Dust motes swirled in the beams of silver light that shivered and crisscrossed each other. The place was still cramped. In fact, it seemed to have collected even more junk in the past 18 years, all resting under layers of dust and rat poop. And did the new owners not bother cleaning this place up? Ed asked. Oh, neat, it's still here, Michael said as his hands brushed over a rotting toy box. No, they said they didn't like spending time up here, Jonah answered. Bad vibes. Not surprising, I muttered. I froze where I was standing as I spotted an old chair tucked in a corner. Looking at it, I could almost imagine the monster that had once sat on it. God, everything is exactly the same, I said. All right, Jonah said as he stood at the spot where we had last performed the ritual. Let's get started. The circle was smaller this time, owing to our large bodies and the reduced space made possible by the added junk, and I was thankful for it. Having my friends within touching distance gave me a sense of false courage. We turned off our phone's flashlights as Michael lit 3 candles and placed them inside the carved pumpkin that Jonah had retrieved from his car. After the grinning pumpkin had started glowing, he handed out the strips of paper. We immediately set about writing our names on them. I had to take a pause and steady my hand before I could finish scribbling mine. How long had I waited for this moment? How often had I imagined how it would all play out, scene by scene, second by second? And now that it had finally arrived, why couldn't I get my nerves under control? My shirt had been soaked through with sweat. Even my longest and hardest fought matches hadn't made me sweat buckets like this. Screw it, I said, holding the paper at the corner to stop my sweaty fingers from smudging my name. I'll go first, just like last time, okay? Hey, Jonah said, his voice raised a notch higher than normal. Be honest, totally honest. Don't mess around, okay? I gritted my teeth but just nodded in reply before tossing my paper into the jack-o'-lantern. What I want more than anything is to be free from this demon, to live a normal life without having some demonic bad luck messing everything up in sight. The others looked at me expectantly. I sighed. And I want Adam's soul to be freed from his torment. One by one they nodded approvingly. I continued. My greatest secret is the fact that I know that my wife has been cheating on me, but I'm too much of a coward to do anything about it. I can't bear the thought of not seeing my daughter again. She's the only good thing in my life right now. It felt like a boulder had been lifted off my shoulders after I finished speaking. Tears stung my eyes and I felt strangely relaxed. It surprised me, for I thought that I would have surely felt too embarrassed to look any of them in the eye. Michael patted my back before he began his turn. What I want more than anything is for this nightmare to end. I would love to have a job that doesn't involve me messing up my back any worse than it already is now. Oh, and yeah, release Adam too, man. That poor guy has suffered enough. Hear, hear, Ed whispered. My biggest secret, Michael said as he rubbed his eyes and exhaled. I'm gay. No one in my family knows. I've only ever slept with strangers who don't know my name. In fact, of all the people who do know my name, you guys are the first to know this. It's cowardly, it's shameful, I know, but I just can't risk losing my family, man. I just can't. Thank you, Michael, Jonah said. That was very brave of you. It was, Ed and I said at the same time. My turn, Jonah said as he tossed his paper in. Thunder rolled in the sky outside, right on cue. What I want more than anything is for my father to remember me one last time before he dies. He has Alzheimer's and it's been painful watching him waste away. He had started to choke, so Ed squeezed his shoulder and whispered to him that he could make it through this. And to free Adam, of course. I mean, it's the only reason I've come here. I feel a strong sense of guilt and, of course, responsibility. I was to blame for putting him in this state. It's only fair that I can help release him. He seemed to turn glassy in the candlelight. My biggest secret is the fact that I almost killed a man. I drank too much one night, showed up for surgery the next morning with a massive hangover. I nicked an artery and the poor kid almost bled to death. And Dad had helped me cover it up, of course. I haven't touched alcohol since that day. Jesus, no wonder he was so insistent on saving Adam. I couldn't help but feel a shameful tinge of satisfaction blooming in the pit of my belly. I quickly stamped it out. Guess I'm last, Ed said as he leaned forward and gently let his paper fall into the pumpkin. What I want more than anything is to be healthy again, To not be ashamed of my weight, to not wake up every morning and look at the mirror and think that I'm fat, to not want to shoot more drugs into my veins, and to bring my dead mother back to life and tell her just how much she messed me up. And to help free Adam, of course. Every single one of us had led a hellish life to get to this point. The question was, would finishing this ritual truly fix things? Shit seemed too bleak for that to be true. My deepest secret, Ed said, his voice cracking. His chest shook as he started sobbing. I killed a man, a junkie friend by the name of Robbie. We had been using together for some time and had almost driven ourselves to the point of bankruptcy. One evening he came to my apartment and told me that he had scored some coke. Cheap, but very effective. Oh, it was effective, all right. He died in front of me. I didn't do shit, I just sat there next to his corpse, high out of my mind. He broke down crying, hiding his face in his hands and bawling like a small child. I would have comforted him had the demon not arrived. The room turned darker, shadows thicker than ink writhed at the far reaches of the candlelight, licking at the yellow glow with a ravenous hunger. The three flames wavered under the assault of the darkness, and then boots hammered on the attic steps. Without thinking, the four of us clasped our hands together. I could feel the fear in the clammy and shivering hands of Michael and Jonah. The boots grew closer and louder. The door creaked open. There he was, silhouetted by the light from the landing just like it had been all those years ago. Hadn't changed at all, unsurprisingly. He took his top hat off as the door swung shut behind him by itself. We watched in silence as he walked towards us at a leisurely pace. I fought back a desperate urge to scoot away from him as he came and stood in front of us. Well, 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 he said in a scratchy voice. So you boys had the balls to do this again, huh? Color me impressed. I thought for sure you would leave your friend to rot. Well, it's not like you left us with any choice, did you? I asked. The firmness in my voice surprised me. The demon chuckled. True, I did not. Regardless, I was sure at least one of you would have killed yourself by now. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that you're all still alive. Wow, I'm actually somewhat excited. A shiver ran through me at his words. What was he excited about? Was he going to continue playing with us? God, were we going to be trapped forever in his web? So, what do you boys want? Why exactly have you summoned me? You know why we summoned you, Jonah said. Let go of Adam's soul and stop harassing us and leave us all alone. I saw the demon nodding in the shadow. Sure, that was the deal, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm gonna let Adam go like you asked. About that other, though. He let his words hang in the air almost threateningly. What do you mean? Ed asked, panic evident in his tone. You have to let us go. We did as you asked, and we made a deal. No, the deal was only about letting Adam's soul go, nothing else. I mean, you can't blame me, right? It's your fault for messing up the ritual and letting me get so much power over you. And I wouldn't be a very good demon if I didn't make use of such a delicious opportunity, now would I? You have to leave us all alone, Jonah insisted. No, I don't. Yes, you do, he said. You said that we didn't perform the ritual properly, true, but I did my part right, and that's the only reason you weren't able to mess with me quite like the others. So, if we've done the ritual right this time, we have power over you and you have to listen to us. That's not true, the demon replied. I mean, look at your buddy Ed. He's pretty messed up, isn't he? No, he was just as cautious as you, I recall. Jonah didn't say anything, but I did. It's possible that Ed's life would have turned out like this regardless of your influence. Ed looked absolutely crushed, but I could see hope sparkle along with the candlelight in Jonah's eyes. You have to listen to us. No, I really don't. You have to. The demon stomped towards me. I have had it with these games. You think I can't destroy you if I so wish to. He grabbed me by the hair and pulled me up on my feet. The others screamed, but nobody actually moved to stop him. I was standing face to face with the demon. I couldn't see his face clearly in the dim candlelight, but I could tell that it was horribly disfigured. Half of it had been burned off, revealing necrotic tissue and rotting bones. He grabbed me by the jaw and forced me to look into his eyes. They were glowing like twin furnaces. Within them, I could see hell, pain, torture, red-hot barbed wire wrapped around naked flesh, iron spikes slowly being driven into wet skulls, rusted knives shearing off flesh and skin, baths of blood bubbling like acid. I heard the screams, unending and full of inhuman anguish. My mouth dropped open, drool dribbled down my jaw. I was slowly losing my grip on sanity. Stop! I was jolted back to reality. I stumbled and almost fell before a pair of strong arms held me upright. It was Michael. I blinked furiously. In front of me, Jonah had his right hand wrapped tight around the demon's arm. Stop, I command you. The veins in the demon's arm bulged, but he obliged. I could see the rage in his twisted face, but he listened. Dear God, Jonah was right. Keep your word, demon. Release Adam and let us all leave. As you command, the demon spat and then snapped his fingers, before vanishing with an audible pop. What the hell? Michael said. Where did he go? Is it over? Ed asked. Did we win? I don't know, Jonah began. He was cut off by a rattling sound like somebody thrashing around in an enclosed space, one made out of wood. As one, we turned towards the white cabinet that Adam had used as his hiding spot. It was shaking. We started towards it as its door was kicked off its hinges and a tiny charred body stumbled out, sending flakes of ash drifting into the air. Adam! I shouted as we ran towards the body. He was writhing on the ground, but he was still alive. His mouth was open in a silent scream. We tried to help him, but he quickly fell silent before anything meaningful could be done. Was he alive? Michael asked. I found myself nodding. Yeah, at least for a couple of moments. What does it mean? Is his soul free now? Can he go to heaven? We don't know, Jonah said. But what we can say with some measure of confidence is that he's free of that demon's grasp. So it's over then? Ed asked. Yeah, it's over. It's finally over. We spent the rest of the night hiding Adam's burnt corpse. We decided to bury him on a hill overlooking our town. It was a good spot. He used to love riding his bike out there. I think that he would like that to be his last resting place. We made promises to stay in touch, but somehow I don't think that's going to happen. I could see it in their eyes. They want to put this all behind and move on with their lives. I'm sure that they could sense the same in me. Maybe it'll be for the best. A fresh start by snapping all the ties that we had to our hellish past. But will it truly be a fresh start? I think so. I've already sent emails to the independent promotions that I've been working for that I plan on resigning, and I haven't felt the gut-churning sickness that would usually force me to take my decision back yet. A fresh start. I feel like I can finally dare to hope. Today's episode is sponsored by Uncommon Goods. The holidays sneak up fast, but it's not too early to get your shopping done and actually have fun with it. Uncommon Goods makes holiday shopping stress-free and joyful, with thousands of one-of-a-kind gifts that you can't find anywhere else. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the United States. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, and because they're made in small batches, the best finds can sell out fast. Recently, one of my family members has really gotten into making bread, so while looking on Uncommon Goods, I found the Bread Baker's Seasoning Kit. It has over 15 different seasoning blends that will take their sourdough game to the next level. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone. From moms and dads to kids and teens, from book lovers, history buffs, and diehard football fans to foodies, mixologists, and avid gardeners, you'll find thousands of new gift ideas that you won't find anywhere else. So shop early, have fun, and cross some names off your list today. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/MrCreeps. That's uncommongoods.com/MrCreeps for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. I've lived my entire life in a holler out in the outskirts of Wyoming County, West Virginia, deep in the mountains of Appalachia. It's a place so remote that most folks don't even know it exists on a map. Just a handful of families in dense, unforgiving woods. This place doesn't have neighborhoods, doesn't have sidewalks, and most definitely does not have trick-or-treaters on Halloween. Halloween isn't a holiday here, it's a test. My family and the others who have lived here long enough to know follow a set of rules on Halloween night. It's not tradition or superstition, it's survival. Those who didn't follow the rules didn't live long enough to tell anyone about it. Our rules aren't just about keeping doors locked or avoiding dark places. They're specific with reasons rooted in events that we don't talk about. My dad always said they came from my great-grandmother's time when people came to these mountains from Scotland and still believed in the old ways. Whether it's spirits or something else that's out there, or things just too old to name. Halloween night here has always been a game of life and death, and each rule existed to give you just enough of an edge to make it through until morning. The first time that I broke a rule, I learned why they exist, and I'll never forget it. Every October around the second week, the rules went up on the fridge. We lived by them. My family took them seriously, and not just in a keep the kids safe kind of way. No, these rules were for everyone. Break one and you would put all of us in danger. Here's how they go. 1. If you hear 3 knocks at the door after sunset, do not answer. 2. If you hear a single hard knock, open the door but do not look at who stands there. Hold out a basket of freshly baked bread and wait until you hear the footsteps leaving to shut the door. 3. If you hear someone call your name from the woods, do not answer. 4. If you see a figure at the tree line wearing a wide-brimmed hat, do not look at him for longer than 1 second. 5. If you hear chains dragging on the ground, sprinkle salt on all the windowsills and door thresholds within 1 minute. 6. If a candle is burning in the window of the old abandoned Anderson cabin up the hill, stay indoors no matter what. These rules didn't exist for no reason. They were handed down because bad things had happened. People vanished, people died, and strange things occurred. That's just how it was. I remember one specific year, years back, when Halloween night fell on a full moon. The air felt different, charged. My dad had a sense for when things were going to be bad. You could just feel it in the holler, thick in the air like something breathing down your neck. Dad told us to get all the preparations done early. Salt the windows now, he instructed, standing by the door, his face tight with worry. We're not waiting for the chains. I followed his orders without question, pouring salt along each windowsill and at the front and back door thresholds. My brother was baking bread, already anticipating rule number 2, the one that we hated the most. It was the one that forced us to interact with whatever knocked, with whatever stood on the other side of that door. We never knew who or what it was, but we knew that if you didn't offer bread, or if you dared to look, it wouldn't be good. By late afternoon, the house was fortified. The bread was cooling on the counter, its smell filling the kitchen. The fire was lit, burning low, and a 12-gauge lay across Dad's lap like it always did on Halloween. Isaac, my younger brother, sat closest to the window, glancing out every now and then. We had about 3 hours before sunset. The rules were clear, everything bad happened after dark. But the waiting was the worst part. The longer we sat there, the more anxious we became. "Did we use enough salt this year?" Isaac asked quietly. Dad didn't answer. He just stared into the fire, gripping the gun tighter. That was answer enough. The first knock came just after dark. A single knock, slow and deliberate. Isaac and I froze, staring at the door. Dad stood up, motioning for us to stay back and be quiet. I swallowed hard, heart pounding in my chest. It was time to follow rule number 2. Without a word, Dad picked up the basket of bread from the counter, freshly baked and still warm. He walked to the door, resting one hand on the knob. "Remember," he said, his voice low and steady. "Don't look." He opened the door just wide enough to slip the basket through the crack. His eyes focused on the floor. The warm smell of the bread wafted out, and I could hear a faint shuffling on the porch. Whoever or whatever it was out there. I saw a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye, a shadow stretching across the porch, but I didn't dare look. Dad held out the basket, his hand shaking slightly. For a few heartbeats, there was no sound, no movement, and then footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps retreating from the porch. He waited until they had faded completely and then shut the door quietly, locking it tight. Isaac let out a breath. "Why don't we just leave the bread out early? Why do we have to wait for the knock?" Dad's face was pale and his eyes were hard. "We have to wait for the knock, and if we don't answer the knock, it'll come in." We thought it was over. We had followed rule number 2 to the letter, and for a moment it seemed like things were quiet. But here, nothing stays quiet for long on Halloween. Isaac was the first to notice him. He was standing at the edge of the woods, and just where the trees meet the clearing. He was tall and thin, a wide-brimmed hat casting his face in shadow. He didn't move, he didn't make a sound, but he was there watching. Isaac gasped, pointing. "It's him," he whispered, voice trembling. Dad didn't need to ask who. He knew, we all did. The man in the hat. "Don't look at him," Dad snapped. "Not for more than a second." I glanced, just enough to confirm that he was there. A tall, dark figure almost blending into the shadows of the trees, but distinct enough to make my blood run cold. I looked away quickly, heart hammering in my chest. We got away from the doors and windows of the house and sat huddled in the living room. The fire, our only light. Outside, the man in the hat stood at the tree line, unmoving as the night crept on. It wasn't until after midnight that we heard the chains. At first, it was faint, a metallic clicking that seemed distant, almost like it could have been the wind, but it grew louder and closer until it was unmistakable. The sound of chains being dragged across the rocky ground outside. Isaac's face turned pale. He shot me a look, wide-eyed and terrified. "The salt," he whispered. Dad nodded grimly. "Go check." I got up slowly, trying to control the tremor in my legs. I circled the house, inspecting every window and door frame. The salt lines were intact. Nothing had disturbed them. The chains continued to scrape outside, dragging closer and closer, but we didn't dare open the door. We didn't dare look. We stayed inside, sitting together in the flickering light of the fire, listening to the sound of the chains until the first light of dawn broke through the windows. We had made it through the night. The man in the hat was gone and the chains had stopped. But as the morning light seeped through the shutters, I glanced toward the old Anderson cabin up the hill, and there it was. A single candle still burning in the window. The rules are clear. When the candle burns in the Anderson cabin, you stay inside. No exceptions, no excuses. Even with the sun beginning to shine and the birds beginning to chirp, the sight of that candle filled me with a primal fear. We have to wait until the candle goes out before we can go outside, before the night is truly over. And that's how it goes here. The rules aren't just there to be followed. They're there to keep you alive. And if you're smart and you don't ask questions, sometimes it's better not to know. Halloween here has always been terrifying, but last year was different. It wasn't just the usual unease or the normal anxiety that came with the setting sun. It almost felt like the rules weren't enough anymore. My dad was getting older and his movements were slower, his hands a little less steady. We all knew it, but nobody said anything. We just followed the rules like always, hoping that would be enough. We spent the day in preparation, salting the windows, baking the bread, the usual. Isaac and I were jittery, pacing around, double-checking everything. With my dad getting older, we felt a greater pressure to take it upon ourselves to prepare. The sky had darkened faster than usual, clouds rolling in from the west, blotting out the last rays of the sun. By the time that dusk fell, the fire was burning low and the house sat in darkness. Dad sat in his usual spot by the door, the shotgun across his lap. The basket of bread, fresh out of the oven, sat next to him. We all waited, our hearts pounding in the silence. I kept glancing at the windows, expecting to see the figure in the hat or hear the drag of chains. And then it came. A single knock, loud and deliberate. Dad stood up, and just like every other year, "Stay put," he muttered, picking up the basket with his trembling hands. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. Isaac and I exchanged a nervous glance as Dad approached the door. As always, I stared at the floor, focusing on the sound of crackling fire, and trying to block out the sense of dread that had settled in my gut. He opened the door a crack, just enough to push the basket through without seeing whatever waited on the other side. But this time, something went wrong. As Dad leaned forward, he knocked the basket against the door frame and lost his grip. The bread tumbled out, scattering across the porch. The sudden movement, the noise without thinking. I looked up and I looked at it, and I saw it. It wasn't a man, it wasn't anything that I could name. It stood hunched over, far too tall to be human. Its limbs were unnaturally long, its skin pale and stretched tight over bones that jutted out at odd angles. Its face was sunken like a skull with pale white skin pulled tight over it, and its eyes were wild and wide, too wide, like it didn't have eyelids. Its mouth opened unnaturally wide, a black, gaping hole that emitted a horrible, deafening wail. It was a sound that I had never heard before, like metal scraping against stone, but worse. It drilled into my skull, making my ears ring and my vision blur. Before I could react, before I could even scream, the thing lunged. Its bony hand shot out, grabbing my dad by the collar. In one terrifyingly quick motion, he yanked him off the porch, dragging him toward the woods. The sound of his body scraping against the ground, his muffled cries, and the creature's horrible wail all blurred together into a scene of pure terror. Isaac screamed first. I was frozen, my mind unable to comprehend what had just happened. But Isaac's scream jolted me back to reality. "Dad!" Isaac yelled, bolting for the door. I followed, my legs shaking and my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. We ran out into the cold night air toward the edge of the woods where we could still hear Dad's faint cries. But before we could take more than a few steps, I saw it. The candle. A single flickering light in the window of the old Anderson cabin. My blood ran cold. We had come outside when the candle was burning. I grabbed Isaac's arm, pulling him to a stop. "Wait," I whispered, voice shaking. "The cabin." As if on cue, the door of the cabin suddenly flew open with a loud crash, as if something unseen was about to come storming out. Something angry. Something that should not have been awakened. "We have to go," I shouted, dragging Isaac back toward our house. We scrambled inside, slamming the door shut behind us. I locked it, my hands trembling so badly that I could barely turn the key. The shotgun was still on the floor by Dad's chair, but it felt useless. What good would it do against something like that? But the night was far from over. We huddled in the living room, terrified, waiting for the next rule to break. Isaac was crying, his hands shaking as he tried to steady his breathing. I stared at the door, half expecting something to come crashing through at any moment. The chains came next. We heard them clattering on the ground, dragging closer and closer. I grabbed the bag of salt, getting ready to double-check the lines of the salt that we had placed down earlier. The chains dragged right up to the front door, the metallic clinking echoing in the silence. I could hear it just outside, scraping against the wooden steps of the porch, but I knew the salt would hold. It always did. Or so I thought. Isaac was the first to notice it. We had forgotten to resalt the front door threshold after going outside. The wind from the open door had disturbed our salt line. Just as I was about to rush toward the door to resalt it, I heard the chains and a creaking against the door. It sounded as though a heavy weight was slowly leaning against it. I knew that we didn't have time. I began to back away, motioning to Isaac to go to the bedroom. Isaac screamed as the door burst open. We ran into the back bedroom, hearts pounding, breathing coming in ragged gasps. I quickly salted in front of the door to the bedroom and checked the windows. "It's in the house," I whispered. I could feel it, a presence, something cold and evil, creeping through the house toward us. I don't know how long we waited or how long we listened to the chains pacing back and forth through our house. Eventually, we heard them go back outside. Slowly, we left the bedroom and quietly closed and locked the front door. I placed a fresh line of salt in front of the door and breathed a sigh of relief. We were safe for now. But then we heard it again. A knock. But not the single knock and not the 3 knocks. This was something new, something that didn't fit the rules. It was a rapid, frantic pounding as if whatever was out there wanted in now. My heart stopped. The rules didn't cover this. Isaac looked at me, eyes wide with terror. "What do we do?" I didn't have an answer. The pounding grew louder and more desperate. The windows rattled in their frames and the fire flickered, casting wild shadows on the walls. Whatever was out there was angry, angrier than anything that I had ever felt before. "We just wait," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the noise. "We wait until daylight." The rest of the night was a blur of terror. Every minute felt like an hour, every sound made my heart leap into my throat. We didn't sleep, we didn't dare move from the living room. We huddled together in front of the fire, clutching the shotgun like it was our last hope, and quietly crying over the loss of our father. The pounding on the door never stopped. The chains outside the house dragged back and forth, a constant reminder of the horror that waited just beyond the walls. And through it all, the candle in the Anderson cabin burned bright, flickering in the distance like a beacon of death. But somehow we made it. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, these sounds had stopped. The pounding had ceased. The chains fell silent. The candle in the cabin had flickered out. We had survived another year, barely. But Dad never came back. Halloween in our holler has always been a test, but last year it wasn't enough. Breaking the rules cost my dad his life and everything's different. And I can't shake the feeling that this Halloween will be worse. I still remember that Halloween night like it was yesterday, even though it was the fall of 1998. I was 13, still young enough to trick-or-treat, but old enough to know that it would probably be my last year. You know that awkward age where you're not a kid anymore, but not quite ready to let go of the things that you love. Yeah, I was right there. My best friends, Josh and Ethan, and I had made plans weeks in advance. It wasn't just about the candy. Halloween in our town was a big deal. Streets would be packed with children and parents partied while kids ruled the night, running through lawns with half-assed costumes causing mischief. The houses were decorated to the max, with fake spiderwebs stretching across porches, jack-o'-lanterns flickering orange on every step, and skeletons hanging from trees. And the air, it had that crisp bite, just cold enough to see your breath when you exhaled, but not so cold that you needed more than a sweatshirt. You could smell the damp earth, the fallen leaves, the chocolate, and a little something else. That scent of plastic from store-bought costumes. Man, it was perfect. The 3 of us had met up at Josh's house as soon as dusk had started to creep in. His parents were hosting one of those Halloween parties for grown-ups, the kind where they hand out apple cider to the kids and spiked cider for themselves. We had on our last-minute costumes and nothing fancy. Ethan had thrown on a scream mask, Josh was a zombie, and I was wearing a cheap Batman cape with a black hoodie. We hit the houses on our street first, just to get things going. The wind rustled the orange and yellow leaves at our feet as we walked, and you could hear them tumble along the pavement. The sun had just about disappeared, leaving behind this deep purple hue in the sky, the last light of day slowly fading away. Porch lights flickered on, and soon we were moving through the first wave of trick-or-treaters. Those little kids with their parents holding pillowcases already stuffed with candy. The sounds of giggling, the wind blowing through the trees, the occasional shriek from someone who got spooked by a fake ghoul on somebody's lawn. It felt like Halloween in its purest form. After a few blocks, we made our way to Franklin Street. Now Franklin wasn't like the other streets. It had the biggest houses, old Victorians that had been there for over a century. They always went all out for Halloween, each house trying to one-up the other with elaborate decorations and bowls filled with full-sized candy bars. All of the houses on Franklin Street looked like they came straight out of a Halloween movie. All except for one, the Mallow House. Everyone in town knew about the Mallow place. It was creepy all year round, not just Halloween. The house had been built sometime in the 1800s, 3 stories tall with an overgrown yard that looked like it hadn't been mowed since before I was born. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Mallow, were an older couple who never came outside. I think I saw Mr. Mallow once or twice picking up the mail, but he was always gone before I could say hello. As we got closer to Franklin, Josh nudged me. "I'll give you a handful of candy if you knock on the door at the Mallow place this year." I laughed it off. Psych. And then what? Get murdered? But deep down, I was feeling that familiar pull. The dare, the challenge. It wasn't Halloween without doing something a little stupid, right? We made our way down Franklin Street along with all the other trick-or-treaters. There was a constant buzz of chatter and laughter as we joined the crowd moving slowly down the sidewalk. The Mallow house loomed ahead of us as we made our way closer to it, sitting completely dark. The gate at the front of the yard was open, and the path leading up to the front porch covered in a layer of wet leaves. As usual, there were no decorations. No fake cobwebs, no plastic tombstones or pumpkins. But it didn't need scary decorations. The house was scary enough on its own. I didn't even have to say it aloud. We all knew it was next. Josh and Ethan started slowing down as we got closer, and I could feel the shift in the air. The excited banter between us had faded to an awkward silence. It was that kind of house that nobody really talked about, but everybody knew to just stay away. You always walked by a little bit quicker, maybe glanced at it at the corner of your eye, but you never lingered. It wasn't because it was haunted. There were no ghost stories with it. It was just creepy. People whispered about the Mallows, mostly rumors. Mr. Mallow was some kind of veteran, though nobody was sure. And Mrs. Mallow was even more of a mystery. Some said that she had dementia and was shut up in one of the upstairs rooms. Others swore that she was dead. Either way, nobody had seen her in years. "I'm not going up there, you freaking weirdos," Ethan said. He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the edge in his voice. Josh kicked at the sidewalk, trying to act like he wasn't bothered. I glanced up at the house. A hulking Victorian with peeling paint, a sagging roof, and windows that seemed too narrow, like they were squinting down at you. Every year, that house stood there, untouched by Halloween spirit. No pumpkins, no lights, nothing. And Josh, of course, wasn't going to let it go. He had this thing about proving himself, especially if Ethan and I were around. That year, we had spent most of our afternoons watching Faces of Death tapes in his basement, trying to outdo each other to see who was the most squeamish. He would never admit it, but this wasn't about candy. It was about who would back down first. He nudged me, a grin plastered on his face. "I'll go if you go." My stomach nodded, but I wasn't about to back down, not in front of them. "Fine," I muttered. But we're in and out, we knock, get the candy and leave. Ethan looked between us, clearly not thrilled, but he wasn't about to be the only one to chicken out. Now let's make it quick. I don't want to hang around this place. We crossed the street and made our way toward the Mallow house. The closer that we got, the colder it seemed to get, as if the place had its own climate. I could feel the dampness in the air now, the earthy smell from the neglected garden mixed with the scent of old wood. Our footsteps crunched softly, and the sound seemed to disappear into the thick silence surrounding the house. When we had reached the gate, we paused. The iron bars were rusty and the gate itself hung crooked on its hinges, like it hadn't been opened in years. But tonight it was ajar, just wide enough for us to slip through. Josh, ever the brave one, was the first to step inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, the air seemed to thicken. I followed, feeling the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on me. Ethan brought up the rear, looking back over his shoulder every few seconds, as if expecting something or someone to jump out from behind the bushes. The porch creaked under our weight as we climbed the steps. I could see the door now, a massive oak thing with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. It looked ancient, the kind of thing that looked like it belonged in a museum. The windows were dark, covered with heavy curtains that looked like they hadn't been opened in decades. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched from behind them. I reached out and grabbed the knocker. I hesitated for a second, my hand hovering over the cold brass, before bringing it down with a loud thunk. The sound echoed through the house, hollow and unsettling. We waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the yard, but inside the house, there was only silence. Josh shot us a look trying to play it cool, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Well, I guess no one's home. Ethan turned to leave. Sorry guys, nope, peace out. But before we could leave, we heard it. The faint creak of floorboards like someone shifting their weight inside. We froze, another creak, closer this time, and then the soft click of the lock being turned. The door opened slowly inch by inch until it revealed a narrow gap. No light came from inside, just darkness so thick it felt like it would swallow us whole. And then a low, raspy voice. Come in. I glanced at Josh, expecting him to make some stupid joke and run, but his face had gone pale. Ethan took a step back, muttering under his breath. Hell no, man, no way. But before any of us could move, the door opened wider. Standing there in the doorway was Mr. Mallow. He looked even older than I expected, more skeletal. His skin was waxy, stretched tight over his bones, and his eyes, you couldn't see them. They looked hollow, empty, shadows casted around them like two black holes. He didn't smile, didn't offer any kind of greeting, just stood there and stared at us. His clothes were dirty, stained in patches that I couldn't identify, and his hands were covered in something dark like oil. My stomach turned as I tried to make sense of it all. Trick or treat, Josh said weakly, his voice cracking. Mr. Mallow's gaze flicked down to Josh and then back to me and finally to Ethan. His lips twitched like he was trying to smile but had forgotten how. Slowly he raised one hand, motioning for us to come inside. You boys are just in time. We've been waiting. I felt something cold run down my spine. We. Ethan stepped back again, his voice barely audible. Guys, let's go, now. But before we could move, something shifted in the shadows behind Mr. Mallow. I couldn't see it at first, just the movement, but it was something dark. And then slowly as my eyes adjusted, I began to make it out. It was Mrs. Mallow, or what was left of her. We stood frozen at the door, eyes locked on the sight before us. Mrs. Mallow was hunched over at the kitchen table, barely illuminated by the dim light. At first glance, she looked almost normal. Just an old woman sitting down for a quiet meal, her thin hands resting limply on the table, as though she had been waiting for someone, waiting for us. But then I saw it. The way that her body sagged like something inside her was giving way, crumbling. Her head lolled to one side and neck bent at an impossible angle, and her body seemed to deflate, slumping lower as if gravity was pulling her apart, piece by piece. Her skin, pale and waxy under the faint light, clung loosely to her bones, too loose, sagging in folds as though her flesh was simply draped over a frame that was barely holding it together. She didn't move at first, just sat there, her empty eyes staring at us. But then there was this sound. It was low at first, a faint crinkling noise. Mrs. Mallow began to shift, slowly, horribly. Her legs seemed to twitch, her knees jerking unnaturally beneath the table as her whole body started to fold in on itself, collapsing in slow motion. Her back arched, her spine pushing out against her thin skin, the bones grinding and popping as if they were breaking apart, rearranging themselves in ways they weren't supposed to. She was twisting and contorting, her limbs bending into unnatural angles as her body crumpled lower and lower until she finally poured out of the chair, hitting the floor with a dull thud. For a second, she didn't move, just lay there in a heap, her limbs splayed out, her chest heaving in shallow, rasping breaths. And then slowly, horrifyingly, she began to crawl. Her hands slapped against the floor, too fast and too eager, like some twisted animal skittering across the ground. Her skin, that loose, sagging skin, dragged behind her as she moved, sticking to the floor in patches like it was melting off her bones. She crawled on all fours, her body twitching with each movement. But her head stayed locked on us, those empty, hollow eyes fixed on us, unwavering like she could see us even though there was nothing there behind them, nothing but blackness. Her mouth hung open, jaw unhinged, but instead of words, a wet gurgling sound bubbled up from her throat, thick and coating, like she was trying to speak, but something inside of her was broken. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. My legs were locked in place, my mind screaming at me to run, but my body just wouldn't listen. She was getting closer too fast, her hands slapping against the floor, her joints popping and grinding with every jerking movement. And her face, God, her face. It was rotting, decaying, skin peeling away from her cheeks in thick, wet strips, revealing the gray flesh beneath. The stench hit us then, thick and rancid, the unmistakable smell of something long dead, something that had been festering in the dark for far too long. Josh let out a strangled gasp, his voice barely a whisper, and he grabbed at my sleeve. "Run," he said, his words trembling. "Now." But I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. She was almost at the door now, her gnarled fingers reaching out toward us, clawing at the air and reaching out for us. Suddenly, her body convulsed, her back arching violently as her whole frame shuddered, and then she collapsed again, her head hitting the floor with a sickening crack, but she didn't stop. She kept coming, crawling, scraping, inching closer and closer. Josh was the first to break. He shoved past us, bolting down the steps and back toward the street. Ethan and I were right behind him, not looking back, just running as fast as we could. I could hear the door creak shut behind us, but no footsteps followed, just that horrible silence. We didn't stop until we were halfway down the block, gasping for breath, hearts pounding in our chests. I glanced back at the Mallow house, half expecting to see them standing there watching us, or worse, chasing us. But the porch was empty and the door was closed. We didn't say anything for a long time, just stood there gulping down cold air, staring back at the Mallow house, expecting something. But nothing happened. The place was dark and silent again, like it had always been. I could still see the faint glimmer of that dim porch light, but otherwise it was just another shadow on the street. Ethan was the first to speak, his voice shaky. "What the hell was that? Did you see that? What was that?" Josh didn't answer. He was bent over, hands on his knees, still catching his breath. But I could see it in his face that he saw it too. He was more freaked out than I had ever seen him. That cocky grin that he always had was gone, replaced by the look of a scared child. I swallowed, my mouth dry. My brain was still trying to catch up with what I had seen. That thing, that couldn't have been her. Not really, no one's body was supposed to look like that. The way that she moved, the way she looked, the image was burned into my mind, and I felt vomit forming in my throat. Josh straightened up, finally breaking the silence. "And that wasn't normal," he said, his voice flat. "There's no way that was normal." "What do we do?" Ethan asked, his eyes wide, darting between Josh and me. "We just can't leave it like this. What if somebody else goes there tonight? That wasn't just some crazy old people, that was." Josh cut him off, his voice hard. "We're not doing anything. We're going home and forgetting this ever happened." "Are you serious?" I blurted out. "We can't just pretend that we didn't see that. What if something's really wrong in there? What if they need our help?" Josh whipped around, glaring at me. "Did they look like they wanted to help you? That was messed up, man. I'm not going back there and you shouldn't either. It's not our problem." I opened my mouth to argue, but the look in Josh's eyes shut me up. He wasn't being a tough guy anymore. He was scared, really scared. And maybe he was right. What could we even do? Call the cops and tell them what? Ethan was biting his lip, his hand shaking. "Man, I just want to go home. Let's go." We started walking fast at first, like we could outrun the memory of that house, of Mrs. Mallow's twisted body. But it stuck with me, clinging to the back of my mind like a nightmare that I couldn't shake. By the time that we made it to Josh's place, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving us exhausted and rattled. We didn't even bother to check the rest of our candy haul. The excitement of the night had soured, curdled into something darker, something that we didn't want to talk about. And Josh's parents were still in the living room when we had barged in, laughing with their friends, oblivious to what had happened. For a second, the normalcy of it all made me feel unhinged, like maybe we had imagined the whole thing, but I knew that we hadn't. I could still see the way that Mrs. Mallow's body moved, like a puppet with tangled strings. "I'm going to bed," Josh muttered, not even bothering to say goodnight. Ethan and I mumbled something in return, but nobody was in the mood for conversation. We were all too busy replaying what had just happened, trying to make sense of it. Ethan and I headed upstairs to Josh's room, but neither of us bothered to change into pajamas or unpack our bags. We just laid there staring at the ceiling. Every creak in the house and every groan in the floorboards made my heart jump. I kept picturing Mrs. Mallow's face. No, not her face, but her mask. That's what it looked like. A mask stretched too tight over something rotten underneath. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had been watching us, not just looking at us, but really seeing us, like she had marked us somehow. It was a dumb thought, but it stuck with me all night. I was terrified that I would wake up and she would be standing over me. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep, but it wasn't restful. My dreams were a mess of dark hallways, twisted bodies and eyes. Those empty, hollow eyes staring at me. When I woke up the next morning, my skin was slick with cold sweat and my heart was still pounding. And we didn't talk about the Mallow house the next day. Not really. Josh was quiet and distant, which wasn't like him. He usually couldn't stop running his mouth, but now he just mumbled answers and kept his eyes down and didn't crack a single joke. Ethan left early, muttering something about having to help his dad with some yard work, but I knew that he just wanted to be out of there. I didn't blame him. The whole thing felt like we had stumbled into something that humans weren't supposed to see. I left soon after, walking back to my house in the cold autumn sunlight, but the daylight didn't help. The world felt quieter and heavier. I couldn't get rid of that feeling sitting in my chest, like something bad was coming for me. That night, I kept thinking about what Mr. Mallow had said. We've been waiting. Waiting for what? Why had they opened the door for us? I tried to push the thoughts away, but they wouldn't leave me. Every shadow seemed a little too dark, every creak of the house a little too loud. I didn't sleep well for days. And then about a week later, I heard the news. Mr. and Mrs. Mallow were dead. It wasn't until the smell had started leaking out of the house that the neighbors called somebody to check on them. They found Mr. Mallow dead in his recliner. He had been dead for weeks. But for Mrs. Mallow, they found her body upstairs in a chair rotting. The coroner said that she must have been dead for at least a year. Mr. Mallow had never told anyone. But I saw her, I saw both of them, we all did. That night, I swear that we saw her moving, walking, and staring at us with those dead eyes. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I couldn't explain what we saw. Josh wouldn't talk about it, and neither would Ethan. We all just went back to our lives pretending that it didn't happen, but it stayed with us, lingering in the back of our minds, a memory that we didn't want but couldn't shake. The town boarded up the house and left it to rot. Nobody wanted to buy it. No one even wanted to get close enough to tear it down. But every year near Halloween, when the air turns cold and the leaves start to fall, I think about that night. About what we saw, about what really happened in that house. That sound, that wet crunch of her body as it hit the floor. It's burned into my memory. I swear that I can still hear it sometimes, like an echo in the back of my mind. I had been right. That was, in fact, the last year I ever went trick-or-treating. I was working the closing shift at Footworks, the shoe store crammed into the far corner of the Chapel Hills Mall. Halloween was supposed to be a night of fun, but instead, I was stuck stocking sneakers for minimum wage. I only had a half hour left in my shift, and I could feel the seconds crawling by. The clock on my phone felt frozen at 7:30 p.m. I drummed my fingers on the counter trying to stay awake. My manager, who was supposed to help me close, had tucked out for an early smoke break and never came back. Most of the customers had already thinned out, but there were still a few stragglers wandering around the mall. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my friend Ben. "Yo, you coming tonight or what?" I sighed. I had been dodging the question all day. Ben's Halloween party was supposed to be the big event of the night. Half of the school was going, including all of my friends, but I hadn't planned on going. After my shift was over, all I really wanted to do was crash in my bed. I started typing. Probably not, when another text popped up. Don't be lame, man, it's Halloween." I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the keyboard. It had been a while since I had done anything fun, and even though I didn't have a costume, I could always grab something cheap from the Halloween store on my way. I wasn't exactly Mr. Social, but maybe it wouldn't hurt to get out of the house for once. "Yo," a voice called from the store entrance, breaking my introspection. I looked up and saw Ben and Derek walking into the store like they owned the place. Ben flashed a grin, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Come on, bro, you're not getting out of this one, you're coming tonight," Ben said, leaning against the counter. Derek nodded, smirking. "Yeah, man, you never come to anything. You didn't show up last year either." "Look," I started. "I'm just tired and I don't even have a costume and I don't even have time to." "You've got time," Ben interrupted. "The party doesn't start until 10. Grab something cheap and just show up. It's not like you have anything better to do." I sighed. They weren't wrong. As much as I wanted to protest, I started to give in to the pressure. Ben raised an eyebrow, a smirk growing on his face, anticipating my answer. "Fine," I muttered. "I'll come, but I probably won't stay for long." "Yes, there it is." Ben grinned, patting me on the shoulder. "You're gonna have a good time, bud, trust me." Derek glanced at his watch. "All right, well, we're heading out. We'll see you there." I watched them leave the store, their laughter fading as they disappeared out of the mall. I wasn't sure that I believed Ben about having a good time, but I was locked in now. I just had to make it through the last stretch of my shift to grab a costume and then down a few drinks to make the night more tolerable. The mall was basically empty now. Most of the other stores were now closed and the place began to get a little darker as more and more lights were turned off. I started mentally checking off the closing tasks, sweep the floor, cash out the register, routine stuff. As I was counting the minutes to clock out, something caught my eye near the entrance. A person stood there just outside the store facing me. They were in a Halloween costume, a creepy red latex devil mask which had a large pointy nose and a cartoonish wide smile which reached ear to ear. Small black horns protruded from the top of the mask. It looked pretty realistic, like one of those expensive movie quality masks. Had it not been so startling, it would have actually been pretty impressive. The mask was paired with a mismatched black and red suit that looks like it was put together from pieces found at a thrift store. At first, I assumed it was a last-minute shopper or someone probably killing time before heading to a party. But they stood completely still facing me, not moving. Not browsing, not shopping, just standing there. I felt my chest tighten up. There was no reason to be freaked out by some weirdo in a Halloween costume. But something about them made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The way that they were just standing still watching me began to eat away at my nerves. I was about to tell him that we're closed when he turned slowly and deliberately and walked away. I just stared, frozen in place. His steps were slow and measured, almost robotic as he disappeared out of sight. I exhaled, realizing that I'd been holding my breath the entire time. What the hell was that all about, I thought. Just some creep messing around probably. It was Halloween after all. I shook it off, trying to refocus on closing the store and getting out of there. But every few seconds I found myself glancing toward the entrance, half expecting to see that creepy guy in a devil mask there again watching me. By the time that I finally clocked out, I was beat and my nerves were shot. I made my way out of the now empty mall toward my car, checking behind my shoulder every few seconds. I safely made it to my car, now fully convinced that the person or whoever it was simply messing around with me. I brushed off that feeling and headed to the Halloween store to pick up a costume for the party. The Halloween store was one of those pop-up stores that showed up every year, taking over abandoned sporting goods stores and the like. I pushed open the door and stepped inside, a chime sounding, ringing loudly in the nearly empty store. The place was a mess. Shelves were mostly empty now and decorations were scattered all over the floor, with a few straggling shoppers picking over the scraps. The sound of Halloween music played faintly through the speakers. I wandered aimlessly, searching for any scraps of a costume. The aisles were nearly bare, but I kept looking, feeling the pressure of time build. Suddenly the music cut off, leaving the store in an uncomfortable silence. I knew that I didn't have much time before they closed, and so I hurried, eyes darting over the shelves. The door chimed again, as somebody else had come in, but I didn't bother to look. I was too focused. At the end of one aisle, I found a small rack with cheap knockoff masks of famous movie killers. I grabbed a plastic Jason-style mask and headed for the register, rushing to get out. As I turned the corner, my heart lurched. There he was, the man in the devil mask. He stood at the far end of the aisle, illuminated by the dim flickering light. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me. My stomach twisted and my throat went dry. No way, I thought, feeling my pulse hammer in my ears. He stood perfectly still, just staring. For a split second, I considered throwing the mask down and bolting, but something kept me rooted. Maybe it was disbelief, maybe shock. I told myself it was a coincidence, forcing my legs to carry me to the front. The cashier barely looked up from his phone as I approached, too busy scrolling through his phone. My skin crawled as I sensed the man in the devil mask moving closer. His eyes locked on me. I could feel it, the weight of his stare boring into me. "Just this," I muttered, tossing the cheap mask onto the counter. It felt so pointless, but at least I wouldn't show up to Ben's party without something. The cashier rang it up slowly, the beeps of the register cutting through the heavy silence. I kept my head down, resisting the urge to look back, but I knew he was still there watching me. "That'll be $10.53, the cashier said, snapping his gum, finally glancing up at me. I handed him the crumpled bills, my hand shaking slightly as I grabbed the change and shoved the mask into a bag. Without another word, I made a quick escape toward the exit. The bell chimed again as I pushed through the door, and the cold night air hit me like a splash of water. I exhaled sharply, tension easing from my shoulders. Instinctively, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see him, the man in the devil mask, standing at the entrance, following me still. But there was nothing. Just the empty store and a couple of people loitering on the sidewalk. He was gone again. I shook my head and got in my car. I kept reminding myself it's Halloween, and creepiness was just a part of it. And besides, I had bigger things to worry about, like not making myself look like an idiot at Ben's party. By the time that I made it to Ben's place, the party was already in full swing. Cars were parked up and down the block, and I could hear the bass from the music thumping before I even stepped out of my car. The house was decorated to the nines, fake cobwebs hanging from the trees, jack-o'-lanterns lining the walkway, and orange lights flickering in the windows. I could hear Rob Zombie's Dracula blasting from inside the house. I pulled the plastic hockey mask out of the bag and slipped it over my face. It wasn't much, but it would do. I didn't feel like going all out for this party anyway. I just wanted to blend in, have a few drinks, and hopefully avoid any awkward moments with people. The front door was wide open and people were spilling out into the yard, already tipsy and laughing too loud. I stepped inside and the smell of beer and sweat hitting me immediately. Ben's living room was packed, people in costumes, some elaborate and some as half-assed as mine, dancing, drinking, and yelling over the blaring music. "Hey, you actually came." Ben appeared out of nowhere, clapping me on the back hard enough to nearly knock me over. He was wearing a vampire costume, complete with fake blood dripping from his mouth. "Yeah, well, you didn't really give me a choice," I said jokingly, raising my voice to be heard over the music. "Here, grab a drink," Ben shouted, shoving a plastic cup of beer into my hand before I could protest. "We're playing beer pong in the kitchen, come on." I hesitated. Beer pong wasn't really my thing, but it was better than standing around awkwardly in the corner. "Sure, yeah, why not?" I followed him into the kitchen where a crowd had gathered around a table lined with orange plastic cups. Somebody had set up a fog machine and the room was filled with swirling white mist, making it hard to see more than a few feet in front of me. I took a swig of beer and tried to relax. It was a party after all. We played several games. The beer had begun to do its job with loosening me up a little bit, and I was actually starting to have fun. For a moment, I even began to question myself on why I didn't go out more. But just as that thought had occurred, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him again. The figure, that devil mask, that long pointy nose and wide smile. He was standing in the living room just beyond the edge of the crowd, perfectly still like he had been at the store. He didn't move or try to talk to anyone, he just stood there watching me. My throat went dry and my stomach twisted into knots. What the hell was he doing here? How did he follow me here? I blinked, half expecting him to disappear like a trick of the light. But when I looked again, he was still there. He raised his hand and gave me a slow, taunting wave, and he turned to leave. Maybe it was the drinks or maybe it was the feeling of security from the crowd, but anger began to boil up inside of me. I set my drink down and pushed through the crowd trying to keep him in sight. I wanted to grab him and find out who he was and why the hell he was following me. But by the time that I had reached the living room, he was gone. Just like that. I scanned the room, my heart pounding in my chest. People were laughing, talking, and dancing like nothing was wrong. I thought about telling Ben, but what could I say? that some weirdo in a devil mask had been following me around all night. You would just think that I was paranoid. I needed to calm down. I told myself it was just some guy playing a prank, maybe somebody who had been at the mall earlier and recognized me. Or maybe it was somebody that I knew just messing with me. It was Halloween and people were supposed to be creepy. I grabbed another beer, took a long drink, and forced myself to chill out. It was all in my head, it's nothing to worry about. I didn't stay at the party long after that. After a couple of more beers and some awkward small talk, I made my excuses and I slipped out. I just wasn't in the mood anymore. All I could think about was that guy. Every time I turned around, I expected to see him in his devil mask, standing there and watching me. It was a relief to get back to my car and leave the noise and chaos of the party behind. The streets were quiet as I drove home, the occasional group of teenagers in costumes still wandering the sidewalks. My parents' house was only a few blocks away, and when I pulled into the driveway, everything seemed peaceful. The porch light was on and the pumpkins were lit on the front porch. I parked and walked up the front steps, fumbling with my keys as I unlocked the door. The quiet was almost comforting after the noise of the party. I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, but there was no answer. They had probably gone to bed already. I flipped on the hallway light and headed for the stairs, planning to just crash in my room and forget about the whole night. But something stopped me. A sound. A drip, a slow, steady drip. Not the drip of a sink, but a heavier, thicker drip. Slowly, I made my way toward the sound in the direction of the kitchen. My breath caught in my throat as my eyes scanned around the house. As I got closer to the kitchen, the sound got louder, and there was something else. A smell, an odd smell, almost like copper, thick in the air. I rounded the corner into the kitchen when I saw the outline of something. Not something, someone. I froze, my blood turning to ice. It was my dad. He was sitting at the kitchen table and so was my mom. Only something was wrong. They were sitting at the table side by side like they had been waiting for me. But there was something horribly wrong. So wrong that it took my brain a moment to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Their heads, they were gone. The jagged red stumps of their necks were all that remained, blood streaking down their clothes, pooling onto the floor. The table, once warm and familiar, was now soaked in it. My stomach lurched, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I stood frozen in shock, every muscle locked in place as my brain struggled to process the nightmare in front of me. At first, I wasn't able to comprehend if what I was seeing was real or some twisted hallucination. And then I saw him. The man, the devil standing in the corner, almost blending into the shadows. He was big, much bigger up close, and his posture was unnervingly calm. In each hand he held a head, their heads by the hair, the thick strands twisted around his fingers. In his hands I saw the source of the sound. Blood dripped from their severed heads, landing on the tile floor with a soft and rhythmic clipping. The sound was horrible, and for a moment all I could hear was the sound of the dripping in my own heartbeat. He didn't move, he didn't flinch. He just stood there perfectly still. His arms were reached up toward me, holding my parents' heads proudly like two trophies. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen in fear. I slowly backed away, step by step, my eyes never leaving him. His head didn't turn, his body didn't shift. He just stared with that pointy nose, that huge red smile, as if he were frozen in time. I kept moving backward, my chest tightening with every inch that I gained. The last thing that I saw before I turned and ran was the man still standing there in the corner, heads dangling from his head, utterly motionless, his cold eyes boring into me. He never moved, and somehow that was worse. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the street, gasping for breath, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone. My fingers barely worked as I dialed 911, my voice trembling as I told the operator what had happened. When the police came and arrived, the house was empty. The man, the devil, was gone. They never found him. The police chalked it up to some kind of gruesome home invasion, but I knew the truth. He had been following me the whole night, maybe longer, watching and waiting for the perfect moment. He had wanted me to see, to know. He chose me for some reason. That was last Halloween, when my life was forever changed. I'm terrified he's going to come back for me this Halloween. I'm terrified that at any moment I'm going to see that mask again.